why do they act this way? And the big idea is this module, this first class is all about how to understand the phase and try to take the mystery out of it. Very often we find with adolescents, I mean, I've dealt with adolescents all my life in one way or another. Since I started teaching teenagers 42 years ago. And very often it just seems so perplexing. The things that we see just don't seem to make any sense. And I believe, and I'm going to discuss this tonight, that the frustration at not understanding things makes us far less effective as parents. So we're going to talk about recognizing what's going on, and more importantly, perhaps, to try to acclimate yourselves to thinking that when you see something that doesn't seem to make sense, to not give in and look for what I call an answer key. Look for something you can figure out, research, try to make sense of what's going on. So why are they so contradictory in nature? These are a few of the things that we often hear about teenagers. They're extraordinarily altruistic. They could do just wonderful things that we would find perhaps difficult, like volunteering to work in the summertime with developmentally disabled kids. And at the same time, they could be so self-absorbed. Sometimes, in these behaviors could happen one after another. Here's Exhibit D. By the way, this is an excellent book if you're interested. Just the title, I think that's just a masterful title. It's the teenager telling the parents, get out of my life, but could you please drive? No, please there. Could you drive me and Cheryl to the mall? Get out of my life, leave me alone. I got this, but just take me to the mall in the meantime. Okay, so that's one phenomenon that we're going to be discussing. This is an actual note that a 9-year-old sent to their mother. It was the first day their mother was volunteering to serve lunch in school, and these were the clear instructions to her mom. She literally wrote this out: no kissing, no blowing kisses, no talking to me. You're just saying hi, and that just saying hi. The mother shared it with me and told me a lot more about it. Here's another one. Why are they so erratic in terms of our relationship? Here's an example. My daughter and I were always close. Now she's generally distant, randomly gets affectionate, and then it's back to hands off again. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so here are two examples of behaviors that we just look at, and either we throw up our hands and we say, yeah, that's teenagers, can't figure them out, or we just get frustrated. But these two, as I'm going to show you, there's actually very logical reasons for them. In fact, both of these are based in research also, to explain these two phenomena. The first one is, why they're contradictory in nature, and why are they erratic in terms of our relationship? They push us away, and all of a sudden they want to become our best friends. Friday night, the most common iteration of this is, I was begging my daughter to help me all day long. It was Friday. I was busy. I was exhausted. I just wanted some help. She was busy. She was on the phone. I couldn't get her. Right after Lechzen, after candlelighting, she snuggles next to me on the couch. Mommy, and she just wants to, and I want to tell her, of course, like, where were you all day? So what's that all about as examples of why do they act this way? I'd like you to share, please, some of these. What are your favorites? Why do they act this way? Or why are they so, just fill in the blank? I think the chat feature is enabled. Can someone check it out? If it's not, you just unmute yourselves. Feel free to unmute yourself. Would you like to share any examples? I'll be glad to get to them, so you'll get a twofer. I'll be glad to actually discuss them. Anyone, folks? Chat's in. Oh, here we go. Chat. Thank you. Well, it works. Testing. Anybody? So the chat is working. So could somebody just type in, if you'd like, an example that comes to mind of either like it's incomprehensible behavior. Why do they act this way? Or why are they so ornery? Why are they so selfish? Why are they so moody? Think of your own um, favorite, so to speak, or something that you have difficulty understanding. Anybody wanna write something in? Why do they want to be left alone when they come home from school? Okay, great. Why do they want to be left alone when they come home from school? I'm going to try to get to some of these. I'm going to scroll back during the Q&A and try to get to some of these because we're going to be talking about these two the two that I posted as a case study, and then we'll go back to these. Anybody else? Why do they want to be left home when they get out? I can think of, so many other things. Okay, so I'll just move on. So the point here is that when we see things like this, why do kids lie? Okay, good. Okay, anybody else? I'll wait a moment if anybody else would like to add something. So I propose I'll go on and we'll look at them. I would like to address some of these in Q&A. I would like to propose that we make our poorest parenting choices when we feel overwhelmed or unprepared. Like if we see something that we understand and we feel that we have tools that we're able to deal with, by and large, we feel more self-confident. Think of your favorite teacher. He or she had that look, that it might not have even been true, but they had that aura that nothing's going to roll them. And the best teachers really do feel that they have tools to be able to deal with stuff. So you're bringing a knife to a gunfight if your children are acting in a certain way in terms of adolescent behavior, and you don't feel equipped to be able to deal with them. So here's a proposal, and I'm gonna actually try to prove it now, that I wouldn't say every single one, but almost always. I call it the answer key. That's one of the common language things that we're going to develop. The answer key means something that you're looking for when you can't figure it out. So if you see things that don't seem to make sense to you, I'm encouraging you, and one of the big takeaways from tonight that I'd love you to walk away with and spend the week observing is why are they acting certain ways, and is there a logical explanation? If I don't know what it is, maybe I'll look it up and try or just think about it, talk to other parents, or come back here. That's what the Q&A 2 nights from now is about, to be able to go over this in detail. Okay, so if there's a logical explanation, will lead to more empowered parenting. In fact, there is research that shows clearly. Again, I generally cite sources if you want to look up any studies that I mentioned, that there is research that says directly that a better understanding of parenting issues leads to self-confidence and actually better parenting. Here are 4 areas that first in way that study showed that it helped the children in their own growth. The parents became more effective, the families were working better, and actually marital satisfaction, which makes sense because that's going to suffer if things aren't working right with the children. So a knowledge base and understanding what's going on, I propose, and the research shows, can really be helpful. Here's an analogy that I think of in terms of not understanding things. Just an analogy. This is not research based. This is just my own thought. If you think of anybody that grew up in a developed country knows exactly what that is, right? Somebody washed their hands, took a shower, and touched an electrical appliance and got a shock. So that person experienced pain, which is true, it was painful for the person, but the person knows exactly what happened. You know exactly what happened. I touched it. I shouldn't have. My hands were wet. You say, should have wiped that. I should have dried my hands first. So you have the pain, but not the confusion, because you know what it is. Take a person from a third world country, never saw electricity. Imagine if they get the same shock, the same circumstances that you have, but they have a great deal of pain on top of that because they don't know what happened. They don't even understand it. Maybe 9:13 every Monday night, I'm going to get zapped from now on. So the pain causes them much more. The pain is exacerbated by the confusion. And what you usually see in situations, that's like, I get this all the time, where parents come in, talk about adolescent behavior that really is quite normal. It could be challenging to deal with, but the behavior itself is within the bounds of what's considered normal behavior, that the research supports to be an adolescent behavior. But since people don't understand it, they literally start attributing things like, Hashem is punishing me because of this. Oh, I literally hear things like this, and maybe you've even said them from time to time, when in fact there is a logical reason to explain why the behaviors are coming. Now, if you have a look at, these are the two things that I mentioned at the beginning. Why are they so contradictory in nature? Why are they jumping from one side to another, from idealistic to being selfish? One great one situation that comes to mind when I think of this, there was a father called me that his son is constantly speaking of how he wants to learn in kollel for years. Actually, the kid loves to learn, and but he knows every single fancy watch by name, and he keeps expressing the desire to go buy them. This particular father, the kid schlepped him to a car show. The guy's a wonderful father. He's a very Haredi guy. I'm sure he wasn't comfortable at the car show. He went to the car show because his teenage son schlepped him there. And the kid wanted his father to test drive a Tesla, that the windows, that the doors came up like, that really fancy one. And the father called me and said, I wanted to ask him how he's going to afford a Tesla on a kollel budget. So again, here we have a behavior that just the father was tearing his hair out because I keep hearing these contradictory things. Along comes Lev Vygotsky. Well, along comes, it was 100 years ago. He had a perfect explanation. It's so logical. And he said, again, there's research on Bottom and other places for you to look up. All of these, you don't have to take notes of it. You're welcome to. But that's all going to be, you're going to have access to all the talks and all handouts and everything like that. So Lev Vygotsky said that it makes perfect sense. In fact, it's a normal and a critical step of development as they go through adolescence, is they want to decide, this kid really would like to own a Tesla and a fancy watch. He also would like to be in kollel. He's trying to figure it out. So the father's bewildered that he keeps jumping back and forth between these these polar opposites, but in fact, it makes a perfect sense. One way you can think about this is just think of people dieting. They do the Atkins diet, then they do a lemon juice diet, and keto diet, whatever. Any possible. Sometimes you could see people cycle through 5 diets in 6 months. So you say, what are you doing? Make up your mind. No, they're trying to make up their minds. So Vygotsky says that this behavior of being contradictory is in fact something that's perfectly normal and predictable. And he would say that if they're not engaging in this, they're not really in that stage because they have to think things over. Why they're so erratic in terms of our relationship. That was another example. My daughter and I are close. She's distant, affectionate, comes back again, drives me nuts. The woman talks about it, candle lighting. Her daughter, she's been trying to get time with her all day. Now she comes and wants to snuggle up and become besties. And the parents don't know what to do. So this erratic behavior also has literally research-based logical reason why people would do this. And as we're going to discuss in the rest of tonight's talk, adolescence is a journey where they go from being a child in your house to an independent adult. And that's a process. They go through they go through that journey. And during that time, they have to do two things. They have to have, if you look at the third paragraph, healthy separation, meaning they have to separate from their parents. If not, they're going to stay kids all their life. They're going to be immature when they're 20 years old. They have to go on and live life and make their own mistakes and be responsible for themselves. So they need that healthy separation, but they're not ready. They're not ready to run their own lives. They need emotional anchoring. So there's actually a term, you can look it up now. They call it refueling, recharging, and literally that the kids get depleted and they want to snuggle up next to an adult or talk to you, or all of a sudden tell you something nice out of nowhere. They need our parental love. You always, even though we're they're going back and forth and trying to figure it out. So that makes perfect sense. And by the way, you never know, especially now, of course it would make sense, but you never know what a kid heard during the week that got them frightened. They may have found out that a parent, a classmate is not well. And all of a sudden they just want to randomly refuel. They want to recharge. You see this with kids in a playground. The three developmental phases are terrible twos, tweens, and teens. So you see in the playground, when the kids are, you take a 2-year-old to the playground, they run away, they're having a great time. Now they come back and give you a hug for a second, then run right back, or a minute. It's not dependent on your needs and wants. It's just what they do. So I wanted to give you two examples, practical examples of things that we can observe adolescent behavior and find it very perplexing, when in fact that is perfectly understandable once we know the research. And that's what I've been talking about at the beginning, that not having, I mentioned that study earlier, that we're least effective as parents when we don't have the tools that we need. Now, this is the theory and practice thing. I'm a very big believer in teaching theory, I never tell people what to do, but I certainly don't want to give you a list of do's and don'ts with your kids. I want to work through theory to explain things so you're able to do this on your own. That's my way of interpreting success, giving you tools so that you can think about it and do it on your own. The problem is that theory sometimes is a little boring. It could be boring. Some people might be stimulated by it, but others might say, "Oh, come on, Yaki, just tell me what to do." So what I did before, if you go back at these slides, I did is I started introducing practice first. So you'll see I often do this throughout. I'll give you some practice, tell you an explanation. Here's a contradictory thing, and here's the theory. So this time I did it backwards, but from time to time, it's going to be a blend. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to be doing theory and practice together. Okay. And now let's get on to the rest of it. Now, here's the theory part, but it's so relevant to understanding what's going on with your adolescents. I'm going to finish the presentation, probably another 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, and I'll be delighted to take your questions. So there were social scientists at the beginning, the turn of the last century, 130 years ago. There was this big debate about adolescence, like why are they like this, and when does it end? So G. Stanley Hall he was called the father of adolescence. He was one of the top people who really explored this. He used German words. That's the title on top, Sturm und Drang, if you want to look it up. The term actually was developed far below him. That's storm and stress in German. It was used to describe certain music and certain art, but he said that this is a turbulent phase in the children's life. It's a storm and stress. And basically the Sturm und Drang theory said that it's a storm, it's inevitable, just, like literally get the patio furniture in, a storm is coming. So according to that theory, there's really not much that we can do about it. I looked for the source, I couldn't find it. I remember years ago when studying the research, I remember somebody comparing it to teething, that it's like a time when the kids get a little crazy, they're in a lot of pain, they thrash out, and then it passes. So according to that theory, adolescence just is, and we just better get used to it. Here's a great quote from Shakespeare. Again, nothing ever changes. This took place then. The internet wasn't around to mess up kids then, folks. If you okay, so just here's a quote, right? He says that in plain today's vernacular, I wish that they would just go to sleep. I wish the kids would just go to sleep from 16 to 23. Or I wish they could just get through that phrase. A shepherd was frustrated by people messing around with his sheep. So that's just expressing frustration with adolescence. Margaret Mead, if you want to look it up, talking about Samoa, American Samoa was a primitive culture. Basically, they lived like people lived 1,000 years ago. And she went there to observe the folks there, and she saw that there was virtually no adolescent stress. And this is really, I think it has tremendous practical applications. Margaret Mead said that maybe it doesn't have to be like that, because there's virtually no storm. American Samoa had very little stress. And by the way, perhaps, again, she wrote something, you can interpret it any way you want. Perhaps it was like that because the kids became adults when they were 12, 13, 14. The way our grandparents, I remember hearing from many folks, some Holocaust survivors, that 2% of kids were in yeshiva, so nobody could afford to have a 13-year-old boy, a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid at home and not working. So in fact, think about this, folks. Therefore, it could be that this in-between period causes the stress, and you can minimize the adolescent stress by giving them more privileges, and supervised, of course. But then, in other words, it doesn't have to be a storm. And I wrote, maybe your grandmother was right when grandparents would say how perfect everything was in Europe. Maybe they were right to a degree, because we didn't have this in-between phase. And parenthetically, folks, I see a lot of this. You see a lot of storm and stress when parents are supporting children after marriage. That's when I did an Instagram live with Chevy Samad, who's a college teacher. She was talking about dozens and dozens of examples of real quarreling between parents. The parents say, "Listen, I'm paying for the stroller. I want you to get this one." Or I'm paying for your kids, stop having kids. Okay. Now, what happens there is that there's no clear delineation, what you're doing and I'm doing. So the kid thinks you're giving me money. That's it. You have no business mixing into my life. The parent thinks it's that in-between phase extended way beyond what it is. Anyway, so adolescence I propose that adolescence is transition. And transition causes stress. This is, trying to get into a hotel lobby. I think of, driving up to a Shabbos bar mitzvah an hour and a half before Shabbos, trying to get a porter to take your stuff up while it's raining. So you like your home, you like your hopefully you're gonna have a beautiful time in Shabbos. So you're going away on vacation. If you're on this line here and I want a favor from you, or I want to have a serious discussion with you, this is not the time. And adolescents are stressed all the time. I'm not going to go through all of this. You can look through it. Again, the handout will be posted I'm going to send you all a Dropbox link where everything's going to be. I actually wrote a mythical letter, from a mother to her parents, writing about, we're having so much stress. I got a lot on my mind. And she says, how would you feel, parents, if you had to move to a new place and you didn't know where you're going to live? Were you going to have friends? Are you going to have work? Are things going to work out? Well, welcome to my world. I don't know. She gives a whole list of things. Will I get into a good high school? Will I marry? How am I supposed to figure out how to marry? So the stress of adolescence going through this transition, which is very painful for parents and very stressful for parents, is also perhaps more so stressful for kids because you know where you are and they don't. I'm just going to close out with some thoughts on adolescence. Just some features. Again, please, I encourage you to look it up and look around over the course of the week. The early adolescence is like 10 to 13. They're just starting. There's not that much friction. Most of the friction is the 14 to 17, because that's when they're really separating. And later adolescents, they're kind of adults. They are this, and by the way, each of these is they're subsets. They're changing biologically and physically. They're going through puberty. Their appearance changes. The boys start shaving. The girls start the body changing and getting their period or and all the other things that go with it. That in and of itself is a huge deal. Then they have intellectual or cognitive. They think differently, and social emotional. So this is some more details about. I encourage you to have a look here about growth spurts, how they think differently. They start pushing for their own privacy. Look at that last one here. May become romantic relationships, increasing arguments with parents as they struggle for independence. The biggest struggle is during that time, because by the time they're 18, they've achieved much of that independence. I'm going to drill in on this last one just in closing. Frontal lobe is the front area of the brain. And look at this. Read that first. The frontal lobes of the last area of brain maturation until mid-20s, late teens, but it's mostly in the 20s. That means that people who take ADD medication, people with ADD have a difficulty with the frontal lobe isn't working well enough. So this impulse control, and they don't have the tools, folks. This is such a big deal. They don't have the physical tools to be able to manage their lives because they haven't developed it yet. This is a very, very big deal. Late adolescence, but let's close. Here's the close. The top segment is the bottom of this slide. You see that starts with frontal lobes, that last thing. I'm going to show you an accident with a fellow named Phineas Gage in the mid-1800s, and how that changed our understanding of brain development. And it's stunning how this relates to adolescence. So Phineas Gage was a responsible railroad construction foreman, and he had a terrible, terrible accident. That's a tamping iron that he has in his hand. They used to use to blow up the blow up bedrock, and when they wanted to make a pass for a train, they used a lot of explosives. Anyway, he never had a terrible accident. On the left side there, you can see the tamping iron was subject to an explosion. The charge that they put in went off early, and Nebuchadnezzar went right through his head and crushed his frontal lobe. You look on the right side, you can see an image. I took this from Wikipedia, and this is just remarkable. This was actually a transformative moment for doctors, because up until then they thought that brains are just like a big mass, and this got them thinking about how just this portion of the brain changed certain parts of it. And what happened was you can have a read at your leisure or now. He was hardworking, responsible. He was a foreman. He managed people. You look at the bottom, the accident that destroyed his frontal lobe, it made him, he literally became a nebuch. He became a teenager. He's fitful, gross profanity. He was cursing. I'm not laughing, God forbid, at his tragedy, but look how he basically became an adolescent. The adolescent behaviors that we have, that they're irreverent and they're obstinate and difficult to deal with. Look at the middle sentence. A child is an intellectual capacity and manifestations. He has the animal passions of a strong man. Even though beforehand he was shrewd and smart, they wrote at the end, he was no longer Gage, I mean, excuse me. And that means that our kids, if you remember back here, we talked about on the bottom of the slide, we talked about frontal lobes developing only when they're 20 years old. That means that the kids are Gages to a degree. They're Phineas Gage. It's not fully Baruch Hashem. It'll develop for them later in life, but it means that they just don't have. Some of the times when we get frustrated with adolescents and we want them to increase their executive functioning, meaning decision making, and to be more responsible, the God's honest truth might be that sometimes they might not be able to, because they just don't have the physical attributes. This is my own take on this, by the way, folks, that the fact that the frontal lobe, there's a fascinating chazal. They probably did not teach you this in school, maybe because they didn't want you to know it. I've asked, many or most folks didn't get this taught to them in school. I don't know, maybe you want to tell me yourself, you can thumbs up, thumbs down, because they don't want you to misbehave. They don't want you to take advantage of the loophole. But I find it fascinating, and this is Chazal. It says that between the ages of 13 and 20, not exactly adolescent age, what research shows is we know as adolescence. So during that time, if they break something, if they key somebody's car, if they break somebody's window, they're responsible. Bezdin, they have to pay it back. And in the times of Bezdin, they would actually it's sold as an everdivi, but it's not what it means. It was forced labor. They slept at home, but they had to work it off. Bezdin, if a kid broke a window or caused damage, he or she would be obligated to pay for it. And if they couldn't afford it, they would literally have to go to work until the debt was paid. My take on it is that Hashem said, look, we got these big, strong people that are fully developed, maybe stronger than us. If I just give them a waiver until they're 20, they'll destroy the world. So if you start up with somebody else, you're gonna suffer the consequences. But this is Yankee Horowitz. I say when it's research, I'll tell you when it's Chazal. This is just Yankee. But I so believe that this is the case. But Hashem said, let's say they don't keep Shabbos, or they do an Aveira that's only between them and God, and they didn't harm any humans. Hashem says, look, I get it. I created you. I know your frontal lobe isn't developed. So if you do stuff with me, we'll figure it out later. So I think it really offers a stunning insight into adolescence, that it's a time while kids are trying to figure it out. They're going through this transitional phase where they don't know where they're going to. We get stressed when we go from point A to point B for a new job, a new house, we moved to this condo 2 years ago. We sold our home in Monsey. I love it. It was a great move, but that whole year was stressful. So they have that times a very large number. So understanding adolescence. So just to review the day, and then I'll take your questions. And like I said, Wednesday, I'd love for you, if you notice something, I want you to put your detective hat on, look around, see some behaviors that might fit into what we're talking about. That's where the real learning happens. And I'll be available to discuss it. And especially if you disagree with things I said, I really mean this. I mean this in all sincerity. No, I'm doing a separate Zoom link for Wednesdays. So it'll be a separate, that'll be for the 8 Wednesdays. So just to review what we learned so far, we started with behaviors that seem to be inexplicable. We picked 2, right? The contradiction and this leave me alone, drive me to the mall, get out of my life.
Hot and cold.
I'm sorry, hot and cold, right? And I showed you 2 studies, 2 pieces of research that explain it perfectly. What I'd love for you to walk away from is to feel that other things also have that answer key, even if you don't know what that is. And what I'd love as an outcome of this first talk was to introduce some facets of adolescence, the idea that it's a storm we can't do anything about, which I totally disagree with. Or, as Margaret Mead says, not everybody has this thing. So maybe there's something that we can do to minimize, flatten that curve. Okay. And then we just discussed that transition, this many different components of adolescent transition, their bodies, their minds, and the granddaddy of all is that frontal lobe that they desperately need to manage their lives. It's not developed until later. Okay, so I'm done. I allowed you to unmute yourself. Please feel free. I'm delighted to take any questions. I'm going to try to keep my presentations to a half hour or close to it. And I'm available to take questions for as long as you'd like. I'm going to be emailing you a Dropbox link that I'm going to be dumping this speech. It takes about an hour to process on Zoom. This talk, I'm going to put the handout in there. I don't want it shared with others, please. But you guys, everything we do, I'm going to put there, including some supplemental things. So feel free. Go ahead, guys. Any questions? Should go. If not, I'll just go back to the chat questions.
Hi.
Connie, please.
Hi, Rabbi Horowitz. How are you? How's everything?
Good.
Okay. I think that it's good. I actually had curriculum night in school, and I was going to miss the beginning, so I just stayed to log on.
Okay, go ahead.
I think what so my oldest is 14 years old. So although I'm like an expert in elementary education, this is all new, and I'm so happy I'm learning about it. I feel like my question is, when do we know when it's not normal, when there's something wrong, when there's something not normal about the adolescent's behavior? Like, this seems so strange and so weird. Like, do we just buckle our seatbelts and wait till it passes, or do I intervene? Like,
so I would say, Mrs. Kashi, I would say that a good way to make those decisions is first to try to figure out what's happening. In other words, if you sit down with the kids and say, your son or daughter, and say, why did you do this? They might frustrate you with an answer like, I don't know, right? And you say, what do you mean you don't know? Who should know? Maybe they really don't know, right? Maybe it was something random. So try to say, look, I'm not looking to punish you. I just want to understand it. Is there something we can learn from this? You did whatever, you broke an electronic toy that you love, and got frustrated and fought, and that escalated into something. What could have happened? Could we talk about it?
Right. I heard also that you said they don't want to be so much with family and more friends are important. So how much should I push? Like, you should be part of the family conversations, family trips, family Shabbos table, and how much I say, okay, whatever you want.
Right. Another member of this group contacted me a couple of weeks ago and asked for exactly this. One of their children said that they didn't want to go to, along with the parents, for Shabbos meal. They had a Shabbos meal in someone else's house. And they said, kid said, I don't want to go there. So I asked what they ate. I didn't get a response yet, but I asked right away, how old was the kid? And my prediction was, no, I'm sorry. I said, when did it start? I knew how old the kid is, but how long has this been going on? What would have been perfectly logical, Mrs. Kashi, would be that it would have taken place when the kid was 8 or 9 years old, 8, 9, 10, or 13, 14. Because during the phase, I wrote a whole column in, if I remember, I'll put that in there also. I wrote a column, I was writing a Q&A in the Jewish Press. A kid said he doesn't want to go to shul with his father. I wrote the whole response, and the guy didn't tell me how old the kid was. And I wrote in the article, I predict that your kid is, 9, 10, 13, or 14. And I submitted it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, not because I'm smart, because that's the age I work with.
Right.
But I wrote the explanation. By the way, they published it in the paper just the way it was. And I asked the father just pre-publication. The kid was 13, actually. And he let me put
Yeah.
his email in case anybody didn't believe that I knew the age. Again, I wasn't trying to show that I knew anything. It wasn't about that. It's about if you study the research and you know what's going on, it's predictable. Why?
Okay.
Because at 11 or 12, they're a Kashi kid, right? Whatever. Let's say the child's name is Avram, as Avram Kashi. So, but Avram Kashi is a child of Rabbi and Mrs. Kashi. So family's going here, I'll go with you. You're going to shul, I'll go to shul. Now, the nature of adolescence is that now he looks at himself like I'm Avram Kashi. Now you don't like that as a parent, right? Hey, we went on these Kalamite trips.
Right.
What's going on?
Right.
Right? I invested so much time and money. Now you don't care anymore. You're going to go run off with those friends of yours. But
Right.
that's healthy to a degree.
That's healthy.
So they
Okay.
think, again, that's why explore everything. Takeaway is there's a reason somewhere that it makes sense. And once you figure it out, it's a whole different conversation. I told that dad, by the way, with the Shabbos meals, I said, negotiate it out. I told him to give him cards. Once at the beginning of the month, write down on a card, free Shabbos meal. I'm not kidding.
Okay, good.
Hey, I'm sorry?
It's about give or take. I think we have to be
Yeah, take the
flexible
card,
as teen
put it in
teen
your file,
parents.
put it in your pile, and you get a new one every month. You can save them. You can do 3 in a row in 3
Right.
months.
Very
And
nice.
and
Okay.
you want to make
thank
it
you.
more entertaining? Tell the kid, look, there's sometimes that I'm gonna have to overrule you, like if we're going to the grandparents, right? If that happens, I'll give you an extra card. Like so you make it becomes a game, not a game, but it's a logical game that's based on their needs and
Right.
wants. Okay,
Right.
good.
Okay.
Anybody else,
Thank you.
folks? Sure, pleasure. Anybody else? Folks?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
What if the child doesn't know how to articulate his answers? Like if you're trying to talk to him and ask him why, and he doesn't know how to answer you.
Give him some choices. Give him some
Okay.
choices. Like let's say he lost his temper and just whatever. He tipped over something at the table, right? Or he had a freak out with his little sister, right? So you say, why did it happen? I don't know. And then you get upset. What do you mean you don't know? Who should I talk to? Right? So
Sure.
ask him, was it something that happened in school? Could it have been this? Sometimes I found that writing it down, just give him a few index. I'm a big index card guy. You'll learn.
Yeah.
But like write a few index cards about this was retribution for something that happened a while ago. Like she did something to you in the last 2 weeks that really got you ticked off, and now you just got angry about it. Was it a follow-up to something? Did something happen somewhere else that had nothing to do with this? And she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Were you not comfortable freaking out in the school because you'd get punished and felt more comfortable here at home to have a little freak out? So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the details.
Right, I know you're saying, right.
But try to give them some choices because, an open-ended question like, what happened? You in all
Right.
likelihood, you're going to get, and it's very infuriating. It's very upsetting to parents. So kind of walk them through it and try to help them with choices. You might even want to do like a flowchart thing. You say, well, was it something that she did to you, or was it you said about something else? Well, no, it was something she did. Did it happen a long time ago, or did it happen that minute? No, it was a long time ago. Okay, so what triggered you now? Was it because and I can tell you from my experiences, many times the kids don't have it processed in their own heads.
Right. He doesn't have he can't process.
So you might be helping him figure things out that way.
Right.
Okay. Now, the beauty of having the same group, this is why I really am looking forward to this, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. The beauty of this is you get to go home and try it out and come back and we talk about it during Q&A on Wednesday or
Right.
next week. And then everybody listens and learns, and we learn from each other. This is a safe space, folks. You know, really what happens here stays here. We respect confidentiality here. And discuss it. Think about it. Someone else or will offer some advice. And as we go through the syllabus, the 8 classes, I hope that we'll start picking up many different skills and different this was about noticing and understanding and trying to get that answer key. Later on, we're going to start using real tools to be able to deal with. Next week, actually, we're going to be doing a lot of that is going to be talking about Rav Wolbe's long-term and short-term and for parenting styles. Then we start really like rolling up our sleeves and analyzing how we're responding to things. It's going to be a lot of fun, but that's the beauty. That's why I set up the Wednesdays specifically for this. Look around, think about it. You know, I hope you all have a life. You know, I don't mean all day, but observe. Just start looking at these things. When you see kids, you know, if you're married, you might have a good time with your spouse trying to figure out some things like, what the heck was that? What do you think? What do you think? Right? Or bring it back to us and we'll talk about it. This is where the real learning happens. The research shows, by the way, that the research shows that the best way to retain information is to talk it over with somebody else. Taking notes helps, even if you throw out the notes a minute later. But talking it over with someone retains it at a whole different level. Okay, so that's what this process is about. Yes, please.
Hi. So
Miriam?
I'm Miriam Russell. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go.
Great. So I have a 15-year-old daughter. I mean, I have a few other kids, but it's too late for some of them. They already went through adolescence. But so I get into issues with more safety things, and because I know that they don't have the frontal lobe in terms of safety, because as you said, they just can't think that way. Besides, they don't have the maturity. Besides, they don't have so much knowledge about things.
Right.
And she's away.
And too much knowledge about other things.
Yeah. And she's away at school. So even like tonight, like she was talking about, and she'd mentioned this before. So I knew that she was worried about a little bit about like doing, you know, part of the school requirement is doing chesed. And so, you know, how to get back and forth from the place that she needs to do chesed with, like she was saying, talking about getting a bike. And then I said, but I'd prefer the person take you back and forth. But then she said, but I don't want to inconvenience her by her having to drive me. So then we're kind of like getting into this argument about a bike that she doesn't even have to get to chesed, but, you know, and then she doesn't want me to reach out to the principal about it.
Because you can embarrass her. I actually, by the way, I just want to know from a different kind of safety.
Okay.
I spoke up once with one of our daughters that was doing chesed in a house, that the woman had a baby and the guy was there, like whoa, like, what's going on? I'm saying, you're saying driving in the car. I'm not so sure that's such a great idea. Like,
so wait, were you concerned because you knew something could be a problem, or you just like?
No, I didn't know. It's not good practice. I wouldn't be in a house alone with a teenage girl doing chesed stuff, you know.
No,
I don't know, I'm just saying.
Woman was there.
Right. So you know, you're not going to be able to stop them from everything. That's just the way it is. And, you know, they're going to have to make some decisions and make some mistakes. I think the best thing you could do as a parent is really try to focus on the things that are really of concern to you. You know what I'm saying? Like really try to save it for something that you really feel is dangerous or you know, and it might be helpful to you to find out from peers or parents who have kids this age, what's the norm? What do other kids that age do? Because sometimes, you know, we make decisions based on our childhood but the kids are living in a very different world now, and you date yourself and you put your political capital into something that they're just going to ignore. I'll give you an example of something that happened with me.
But I have a question because it concerned me what you just said before. Would you suggest that, again, she's out of town. She's not where I live now. You know, there's a principal, there's dorms, whole thing. She's 15 and Chesed is a requirement.
Right.
And I mean, would you suggest that I speak up to the principal and say, how do we know it's safe at the Chesed, at the where the kids are doing Chesed?
You could talk about look, if your principal, if she gets upset at a polite question of that nature, she shouldn't be. I'm saying it's not.
I think she shouldn't be principal. That's for sure. I feel like.
No, but I'm saying I don't know. It's when I went into the principal, then I just said declaratively, I said, my daughter is not doing this anymore. You know, I said, this is not, you know, but like I threw the flag.
Any kind of Chesed in
you can't do that all the time. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about Chesed in any? Because I know.
No, I was just uncomfortable.
At that house in particular.
Yeah, the guy his wife was at the house was chaotic, and you know, what's my daughter doing then with the married guy? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, but
it was a long time ago. I just
out in terms of all.
I don't know, but I want to take. If I can finish my thought there. I grew up in Bell Harbor, Queens. There was a 7 o'clock minyan and an 8 o'clock minyan for Shachris. That's it. Okay? And when you were home from yeshiva, Ben Azmanim, you went to the 7 o'clock or the 8 o'clock. That was it. And my boys they were from yeshiva, they started davening at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I got really upset at them. And I said, like, what kind of business is this? Yavzman Krishna. We're like, what, because to me, it was like so foreign. And finally, one of my sons said, my Rabbeim daven then. And I said, get out of here. And I took him down. He said, all the Rabbeim, and not all. He said all, it was 2, whatever. But he says, all the guys daven then. So now, whether I think that's right or not is irrelevant. I said something that was dramatically out of style or timing, or I dated myself and made myself irrelevant by talking about something that just didn't resonate with him at all. He thought I was just, yeah, whatever. Like, you know, your grandfather used to talk about the guy delivering milk bottles and glass to the house, you know, like. So I don't know. I'm saying whatever you're going to talk to whomever about, find out what the kids are doing, if they're actually doing it. If that's, I don't just mean for this. I think it's good practice. If you're going to make an issue with one of the kids, that could be about drinking, or, you know, so many boys or girls, you know, there's a lot of different things, but just find out what the facts are, ask a 21-year-old young lady that you know, am I on the right track? She's better off than you asking me. Find a with it 21, 23, 25-year-old and discuss it with her. You'll get some good advice. Okay? And let's talk next week. Yes, anybody else, folks?
What were you mentioning about Wednesdays? Is that an extra class or something?
No. So this program is designed that we do a new talk on Monday. Every 8 Mondays, there's a new topic. And it's all sequential, meaning it's building on previous learning. But every Wednesday, I set aside time for a 9 o'clock Zoom schmooze. No topic, just to review what we learned and have an opportunity to try to observe what we spoke about in this class, this behavior that seems to be bizarre, or you can't figure it out. And you know, Rabbi Horowitz, I actually noticed another thing that drives me nuts, you know, to think about it in those terms, or a different way. You know, I thought about something that my kid's been doing for the longest time that made me nuts, and I figured out a reason. Okay, so that's it, or it's just shooting the breeze, not shooting the breeze, I mean, open talk about Q&A, but I would like you to have an opportunity